Welcome, everybody. I'm Judd Newborn. I served as founding historian of New York's Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to the Holocaust. Today, among other things, I'm a dramatic multimedia storyteller, often on themes relating unique stories of the Holocaust to today's most compelling issues. I'm substituting today as host for our prodigious Olivia Mattis, president of the Sousa Mendes Foundation, who is away on business. The Sousa Mendes Foundation, of course, honors the heroic Portuguese diplomat who, against orders, saved thousands of refugees struggling to escape the Nazi onslaught and was gravely punished for his deeds. Now, there are two famous ships which bookend the history of Holocaust refugees and rescue. We've already explored the 1939 story of the plight of the St. Louis. Today's program will focus on the thrilling story of the Exodus 1947 from the perspective of an actual survivor who was on board and who has a surprising little-known story to tell. Now, you all know today's esteemed moderator, Dr. Mordecai Paldil, who will provide us with historical context and introduce our special guests briefly. Dr. Paldil headed the Righteous Among the Nations department at Yad Vashem for decades and is author of many important books on the subject. He now teaches at Stern College and Touro College and serves on the board of the Sousa Mendes Foundation. Dr. Paldil, I hand the program over to you.
Thank you, Judd, and welcome everyone. I want to give a little historical perspective on the topic of today, the background of the Exodus ship. It's known under the project known as Aliyah Bet. Aliyah Bet is a code name given to illegal immigration by Jews between 1934 and 1948, 14 years, in violation of immigration restrictions by the British. Ships usually left southern European shores with one destination in sight, the land of Israel. They hoped to dodge and bypass British Navy boats patrolling the approaches to Palestine. Aliyah Bet was a Zionist operation planned and organized from various European locations in tandem with the Jewish agency in Palestine. Zionists justified this operation on the basis of the Balfour Declaration and the British commitments to establish a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. In other words, allowing Jews to freely settle in Palestine. Now, here you see the sea lanes. You can see that we are here, see the Mediterranean Sea. On the lower right side, you see today what is known as Israel, then it was known as Palestine. And I pointed out with these arrows from where these boats left. And in the pre-war period, most of the boats came via Romania and Bulgaria, which is, if you move this slide a little bit up, you'll see this is Bulgaria and Romania. And after the war, most of the boats came from Italy and France. So this large-scale operation can be divided into three time periods. The pre-war phase that also lasted in the first 2 years of the war. Now this is something that may surprise you. When the Nazis allowed Jews to get out, and the faster the better, while the British, the good guys, imposed greater immigration restrictions to have fewer Jews to reach the shores of Palestine. Under the British White Paper of May 1939, only 75,000 Jews would be allowed into Palestine during the next 5 years, and none thereafter, unless the Arabs agreed. Most illegal refugees exited from ports in Romania after sailing down the Danube River, collecting passengers fleeing the Nazis and anti-Semitism from Austria, Slovakia, Yugoslavia, and Romania. The first attempt to bring in a large number of illegal immigrants by sea happened in 1934 when some of the 350 Jews sailed on one of the boats called the Valos. It was a chartered ship, and she arrived off the coast of Palestine, and the passengers disembarked with the help of the Haganah, the main Jewish underground in Palestine. More ships followed, with some captured by the British Navy on high seas, are about to land the passengers on the shores of Palestine. Illegal immigrants were arrested and incarcerated. Now you see two boats. The one on the left is the Parita, and the other one is the Tiger Hill. The Tiger Hill was fired upon by the British when it approached Palestine, and 1 or 2 people were killed. You can see that these boats came in full view. People on the shore were watching, and most of the passengers, of all of the passengers, were interned by the British. The British policy was they would intern these people, and then after a while they would let them go in Palestine, but their names would be taken off from the quota of the number of people allowed into the country. And the quota was 75,000 for a 5-year period. Now, some of the boats didn't make it. So slide 4 will show you the Patria. Slide 4. Now, the Patria there were 1,770 Jewish refugees who sailed down the Danube River with German encouragement. Now, this is October 1940. We are already in World War II, but the Germans still allowed Jews to leave, and they didn't care where you went. So they sailed down the Danube River, and which ends in the Black Sea, and they boarded 2 boats in Romania that left for Haifa. The boats were intercepted by the British Navy. The passengers in Haifa were reboarded on another ship, the Patria, and the British decided that this time they were going to take all the passengers to the distant island of Mauritius off India. But Haganah agents planted a bomb near the engine of the Patria. The bomb was too powerful. The ship began to sink, and about 260 people of the original 1,700 drowned and died. So here you see the Patria sinking in Haifa harbor. So this is one of the tragedies. And the Struma boat is the one that was torpedoed by a Russian submarine, which mistook it for a German merchant ship. Russia and Germany were then at war. That was December 41 to February 42, and 790 people died. Now I want to point out that these were rickety boats. The Zionist organization found it very hard to get boats, to purchase boats, and it had to buy old-fashioned boats that were once used to transport coal and animals. So this is one of the boats. And so the Aliyah Bet also witnessed some tragedies. People didn't make it to Palestine, but the boat sailings went on throughout the war, but it picked up steam after the war. And so I come now to the slide, which is called Bricha. Bricha was a term, it means in Hebrew flight or escape. It was meant to get as many Holocaust survivors to challenge the British blockade of immigrants to Palestine. So passengers were collected from places scattered across post-war Europe, but especially those in Eastern Europe where anti-Semitism was again on the rise, and including many languishing in displacement camps, DP camps, in Germany, Austria, and Italy. People gathered at collection points, continued via either train, trucks, on the road, crossed borders, unmarked roads, to ports on the Mediterranean Sea where ships brought them to Palestine. I have to point out that some 250 American veterans from World War II volunteered to sail 10 ships from the United States to Europe, and there to bring thousands of survivors of the Holocaust to the shores of Palestine. So what was the British policy after World War II? And that takes us to the story of the Cyprus camps. Cyprus, not far from Palestine, right off closer to Turkey, was then held by the British. And all the boats that were captured by the British, the passengers then took them and they sent to Cyprus, where they set up these most tent camps for thousands and thousands of refugees who stayed on Cyprus Island in hastily constructed refugee camps. They stayed there until Israel came into being in 48. So here you have a few photos. You see photos of people arriving in Cyprus, and you see photos of the camp itself. And then the British in Cyprus, they allowed the interned people to keep busy. So you have a photo, you see they allowed a sewing workshop so people could sew their clothes. And one of the famous Israeli singers after Israel became a state, Shoshana Damari, who started her career as a singer, she was originally from Yemen, she was even allowed to come to Cyprus and entertain the interned people. So this is the Cyprus episode, which lasted from 45 to 48, and about 30,000 refugees were forced to stay there, and they were not harmed by the British, they were not killed, but they were not allowed to reach Palestine, with the name of the country then known today, Israel. So let's move on, please. And the most famous of the boats of the post-war period was the Exodus. So more on the Exodus you'll hear later on, but I just want to show you a few photos. The Exodus was originally named President Warfield. It was a boat that made the run between Baltimore and Virginia, taking passengers back and forth. The Zionist organization Port purchased the boat and took it to France. And in France, in this, not far from Marseille, in a harbor called Sète, people had been brought there by train. There you see the photo of people on the train being on the way to, they didn't know where they were going. They were told, we are taking you to a place where we'll put you on a boat. And on the picture, the lower picture on the left, they arrive in Haifa on the British Guard. The British had boarded the boat while the boat was on high seas. There was a struggle there, and there were two of the refugees were killed when they opposed the British who took over the boat. The boat is in Haifa, and then in this case, the British decided the people would be returned. They were not going to be taken to Cyprus, but they would be returned from the point of embarkation, which is France. When it reached France, the people didn't want to get off, and the British said, in that case, you'll go all the way back to Germany. And the boat went all the way back to Germany. So here on the lower right picture, you see the passengers being reboarded on a British boat, on one of the British boats, under very strong guards by British soldiers. This is in Haifa, for their return journey. It turned out it was a terrible mistake by the British, because the whole world was watching as these people were forced, these Holocaust, all of them were Holocaust survivors, were forced back to Germany of all places. So the British bungled here, and the Zionists gained a diplomatic and propaganda victory. Incidentally, I just want to add that while the boat was in Haifa, a UN commission was there, and it watched as these people were forced back on a boat to the return journey. That is the UN commission that later on recommended that Palestine be divided into two states, and led to the famous 29 November vote by the UN to create a Jewish state in Palestine. And finally, all of this ended on May 14, 1948, when the British finally gave up and they left. And here you see British soldiers boarding a troop ship in Haifa. And on that same day that the High Commissioner, the last British High Commissioner left, Ben-Gurion, it was a Friday afternoon, May 14, Ben-Gurion proclaimed the birth of Israel. And when Israel came into being, that's the end of Aliyah Bet, the illegal immigration, because from now on, any Jewish person who wishes to come to Israel automatically is allowed into the country. And that's the last photo that I showed you, that I'm showing you here on the right. So this is very briefly the story of the Aliyah Bet, in which the Exodus 1947 was the largest ship because it had over 4,000 passengers. So now I before I introduce the next speaker, I will say just a few words who the next speakers on our program are. So we have Uri Boreda, who is an Israeli screenwriter and producer. He has made a lot of documentary films, such as Born to Fly and etc. He's a member of the Israel Directors Guild and of the Israeli Academy of Films and Television. And then we will have, of course, Michael STOLOWITZKY. I will let him speak. I mean, he was an 11-year-old on the boat together with the Polish woman, Gertruda, who saved him during the Holocaust. Okay, so he wrote that book, he wrote this in a book, and he has lectured about this. So this is an exceptional story where you have an 11-year-old Jewish orphan and his nanny, who is a Polish woman, on the boat, and he will tell more about this. And finally, last but not least, we have Dr. Tzvi Hatkevich. Now, Dr. Tzvi Hatkevich was also on the boat, but he wasn't yet born. His mother was pregnant with him, and so he was on the womb of his mother, and he was there then, and he will tell more about himself. He was actually born in Germany when the Persians were disembarked forcefully in Germany by the British. Okay, and but then he returned to Israel. He's a chemistry professor. He's got a PhD degree. He fought in the Six-Day War and the Yom Kippur War, and so he's a fascinating person. So now I am turning the mic over to the film producer, the film that I hope all of you have seen, Mr. Uri Boreda. The floor is yours. Please take the mic.
Thank you, Mordecai. Good evening to everybody. Evening in Israel. It's evening. I'm in Israel right now. I hope you enjoyed the film. And I want to tell you things behind the screen of the film. So how it all started. Well, in a family gathering, my aunt said that my great uncle was on board of the Exodus. I said, oh, really? I didn't know that. And I started to research the ship. I knew the story on its own. We studied it in school and everything. And after researching, I say, wow, this is a good story for a film. As a kid, of course, I saw the film Exodus. And suddenly I realized that the story of Exodus is not the story of the film Exodus, of Leon Urie's film Exodus. So I decided that I will make a film. And I went to a friend of mine and I told him, you know, I have a new project, but there is a lot of material to research and the production is very complicated. Let's do it together. And he said, what the topic? What is the subject of the film? I say, about the Exodus affair. Say, you're kidding me. I say, why? Say, my father was on the Exodus. I say, really? Well, the word is too small. So we started working on the film and researching to the story. When I wrote the story, I realized that we have to pick the main character of the film very, very uniquely. So what we did, I interviewed more than 100 survivors that was aboard the Exodus, and I heard amazing stories. But we decided that the main characters of the film will be one that made the whole Odyssey, the whole journey. That means they lived during the Holocaust, they arrived to France, they boarded the Exodus, they arrived to Haifa, then they was deported in the prison ship to France and then back to Germany to the camps. And that's how we picked our heroes. The other thing was that they are healthy enough to make the voyage, because we wanted to take every one of them to the places where they started. their home in Ukraine, in Vilnius, in Hungary, and of course to bring them to France and to the deputy camp that they were. So that's how we picked our three main characters that you saw in the film. I hope you like them and you sympathize with their story, and we did. So why calling the film Exodus the True Story? Well, the reason is because of the other Exodus film, you know, with Paul Newman. That was a very nice film. I liked it very much, and I like Paul Newman. But this is not the Exodus story, of course. This is another story that Leon Uris wrote in his book, and they made a film out of it. And the story begins in Cyprus. The Exodus and the refugee of Exodus were never in Cyprus. So we decided to name the film Exodus the True Story because we wanted to tell the true story of the affair. So this is the name of the story. And well, now the other thing was, how do we get to this film and what we will show the viewers? Because, you know, when you make a film, you're not making just talking heads, because people will be bored after 10 minutes. You have to show them something. So we took 3 researchers and sent them, one to the United States and one to France and one in Israel. They researched all the archive and find us all the archive footage that you saw in the film. It took 1.5 years, the research, to find all the footage that you saw. The production was around 5 years from start to finished product. So it was very, very complicated film, because we filmed in 6 countries. We filmed in Ukraine, we filmed in Vilna, we filmed in Auschwitz in Poland, we filmed in France, and we filmed in England, and we filmed in Hungary. So it was very complicated, and it was, and I'm glad that we did it, because the feeling that the viewer have when the character tells the story, not from his couch at home, but in the places where it really happened, it is a different thing. So so that's why we did it. And the other thing is, I think for the first time we brought the sides, the British side of the story, the French side of the story, and of course the Jewish side of the story. And then we have the whole story. And that's how we managed to do it. And I hope you enjoyed it. We tried that the film won't be too many about the Holocaust, but mainly about the odyssey of the ship and on the illegal immigrants, because you have to understand that the voyage of the ship wasn't a cruise, wasn't tourist that was on a cruise, because it was 4,500 Holocaust survivors on board of this ship. That's why it was so important. Finally, I want to show you a scene that we took out from the film, that you will just see it. The scene is about what happened when the prison ship was deported from Haifa to France. And they wanted one of the Haganah commander and another crew member of the Exodus wanted to inform the other ships to not disembark in France, because if they will disembark in France, the Aliyah Bet will stop. So they they didn't know how to do it. And now we'll see how they thought to do it, because they didn't have any communication, nothing.
החלטנו לשאול את ה-1,500 מעפילים מה עושים. וכמו איש אחד, אמרו כולם, אנחנו לא נרד בצרפת. אנחנו נשאר על הספינה. או שיביאו אותנו לארץ ישראל, או שנמות על הספינה.
סגן מפקד האקסודוס, מיכה פרי, אמר שההחלטה לא לרדת מהאונייה לא תעזור בכלום אם המעפילים שעל שתי האוניות האחרות כן ירדו. עלינו למצוא דרך להודיע לפחות לאנשי אחת מהאוניות שלא ירדו בצרפת. הבעיה הייתה כיצד יוצרים קשר עם האוניות האחרות ששטו במרחק כ-300 מטרים מאיתנו. אז צץ במוחי רעיון. אולי מישהו מאיתנו ייפול למים, ישחה לכיוון אחת האוניות. היות ולא משאירים אדם במים, יאספו אותו. וכך נוכל להעביר את המסר.
לא הייתי עוד בן 21 אפילו, וציוני נלהב. התיישבתי בקדמת האונייה, כאילו אני משתזף, ומיכה שישב בכלוב עשה לי ככה, נפלתי אחורנית. לקח לי המון זמן להגיע למים, כי נפלתי מ-13 מטר. וסללתי עמוק מאוד עד שעצרתי את הצלילה וחזרתי, הגחתי חזרה ודיברתי על עצמי. אמרתי, הנה נוח, באמת הצלחת, עכשיו אתה גיבור. הצלת את המפעל הציוני ואת עלייה ב' ואת המדינה היהודית, יכתבו עליך בהיסטוריה, בספרים, כמו שכותבים למשל על הרצל, יכתבו היה נוח קליגר, שהוא, כמו שאומרים, סינגל הנדד, הציל את כל המפעל הזה. אתה גיבור, לנצח. ונשקפתי על הגב, וחיכיתי עכשיו שהראש ניגור תעצור, תוריד סירה וששון ושמחה. ומה קורה? ראש ניגור לא עוצרת. לא רק שהיא לא עוצרת, היא משנה כיוון. והיא מתרחקת ממני. אני נשאר באמצע הים התיכון. איך אני אצא מזה? אמרתי, אידיוט, למה אמרת שאתה שחיין? סיפרתי את זה לכמה בנות כדי לעשות רושם. לא רק שלא תהיה גיבור, אתה לא עשית כלום. אתה בכלל כישלון טוטלי. מה יגידו הרים? ניצל מאושוויץ, ופתאום טבע בים. הרי איש לא יספר להם את הסיפור האמיתי שרציתי לעשות מבצע גדול, אלא נפל למים וטבע. ואני שומע סירנה. אמרתי, בטח, עכשיו יש לה גם הזיות, סירנות. ואני מוריד את הידיים, וכמו שאני מוריד את הידיים, אני נוגע במשהו. הבריטים שלחו שולת מוקשים לחפש אותי. זה נס שאני יצאתי מהמים, באמת נס. זה המקרי שהם עלו עליי, הם כמעט הרסו אותי אגב. הם לא חשבו שהם ימצאו אותי בכלל.
Well, that was the scene that wasn't in the film Exodus, but don't worry, this scene was on another film, the film that we produced on Noah Kliger. Noah Kliger was the last remnant of the boxing team in Auschwitz and was one of the crew members of the Exodus. And I made a film on him, so the scene finds itself in his story. Even though Noah didn't succeed to pass the message to the other ships, nobody from the 3 ships disembarked the ships in France. Thank you very much. And now, please, Michael.
All right. My name is Michael STOLOWITZKY. I am, number one, I'm the passenger. I was the passenger of the Exodus. So, I would like to see some slides, with your permission. That's it. What you see here, it's me, Michael, and Gertruda. Gertruda is my angel. She is the woman that saved me from the Germans, hired me during 5 years of the war, and came with me to Israel on board the Exodus. She was one of the few Christians on board the ship, and that's how we came to Israel. But of course, the British didn't let us out. So we were shipped back all the way to France, and as my former speaker said, and then at the end we ended up in Germany. And this is the moment where they gave us false identity. They dressed us up as American tourists, you know, with a Hawaiian shirt, white pants, and we boarded another ship. The name of the ship was Transylvania. It's a luxury liner, and we went as American tourists for one-day visit of the Holy Land, to go to visit Nazareth and the Sea of Galilee, and that's what happened. The only thing is, we never came back to the ship. That's how we ended up in Palestine. So now I will begin my story. Can we change the slide? This is my home when I was a rich man. All day long I died of it. When I was a rich man, this was my home in Poland before the war. Carry on, next slide. This is my father, one of the richest people in Warsaw, who was killed in Auschwitz. It's a long story which we will not tell today, but carry on. This is another man that saved me. As funny as it sounds, you look at an SS officer, and here I am, a Jewish man, and I'm saying he saved me, when all the other thousands and millions he killed. Well, I was walking one day with my mother Gertruda in the streets of Vilna. Here we are walking, me, the little boy, and Gertruda, my angel. All of a sudden, 4 German soldiers comes towards us with guns. They pointed us the guns, and they said in German, "Hosen runter." It means take off your pants. And I knew at this moment that 2 seconds from now, Gertruda and me will be dead. So Gertruda said, "He is my son, he's a Catholic boy. He's not Jewish." So the German says once more time, "Hosen runter." And I am holding my little boy, I'm holding the pants, and all of a sudden, from around the corner, from a little street, there is a voice, "Leave him alone. He is not Jewish. Let him go immediately." And comes out an SS officer that you saw this picture before, and he said to the German soldiers, "Let him go." And they left immediately because he was a high-ranking SS officer. And my mother, I'm calling Gertruda my mother because I did not remember my real mother who passed away during the war in Vilna. So my mother said to the German, "Excuse me, sir, what is your name?" He said, "My name is Karl Ring." And if you will read the book about my life, it's called Gertruda's Oath, which by today, 700,000 books were sold in 15 languages. You will get the book and you will read all the other details. So this is the Exodus in the harbor of Haifa. Her story was, there she is after the battle, all broken down, because we had the battle with the British. They were shooting at us. 2 boys, Yakubovitz, they are brothers, they were killed by the British. I remember them as a young boy. And we were fighting the British with potatoes, with bottles, with anything, tomatoes, anything we can put our hand on. We didn't have weapons. So that's the famous Exodus. Here is a letter that I wrote to Gertruda, my mother, in April 1948. This was when we were already in Palestine. My mamusha, it's in Polish, my mother. You taught me things that will stay with me all my life. You taught me that you believe there is hope. You were a mother and a friend to me and guardian angel. And I hope we'll always be together and you always stay with me as you have. I don't know if I can reward you for everything you've done, but I hope I can now. It's my turn to watch over you, to make sure you'll always be happy, in spite spite of all the difficulties in store for us. I'll never forget. Love, your Michael. Yes, this was a letter I wrote to her. Next slide, please. This is when I was in Israel, in a school, Ben Shemen, very famous boarding school. And Gertruda, my mother, who lived in Tel Aviv, came to visit me once a week. Well, later on, as life gone on, and she was in the old age home in the city of Nariya, I came to see her once a week. That's life. Next slide, please. And this is a handsome man that you just hear his voice now. Well, of course, that's me at the Dan Hotel in Tel Aviv, where I'm staying always. Carry on. And this is, again, the last picture that I will show you. I can speak and speak and speak and speak. This is me and my love, Gertruda. Thank you very, very much.
Now we have Tzvi. Tzvi, you're on.
Thank you for hosting me, a son of a pregnant woman on the Exodus ship, which gave birth to me in a British detention camp, Sangwald in Germany, after she and my father were exiled from the land of Israel. I was born on the 29th of November, 1947, the day on which the UN decision was made to divide the land of Israel into a Jewish state and an Arab state. Thank you for hosting me as a member of the Heritage Preservation Team of the Exodus ship 1947 at this commemoration event of the 75th anniversary. The picture that you are watching now was painted by Tom Freeman, an American artist. The painting was donated by Mrs. and Mr. Stefan Fellenfriend to the Clandestine Immigration and Naval Museum in Haifa. You can see here the exodus between two British destroyers attacking her before arriving to Israel. I would like to show you now the Ma'apil honorary badge, an Israeli decoration awarded by the Ministry of Jerusalem and Heritage to those who tried to arrive to the land of Israel by the so-called illegal immigration at the sea, on land, and in air between the years 1934 and 1948, contrary to the instructions of the British government as a part of the British mandate in the land of Israel. You can see on the badge the Hebrew words, which I'll translate it. They presume to go up to the top of the mountain. It's taken from Bamidbar, the fourth book of the Bible. They are tearing the fences of the British mandate. The anemone flower symbolizes the blood of the victims of the so-called illegal immigration and symbolizes also the red berets of the British soldiers. At the back, you can also see the silhouette of the Exodus. On July 9th, 2017, at the 70th anniversary of the Exodus sailing out from the port of Sète in France, a new memorial plaque that was unveiled at the St. Louis dock from where the immigrants boarded to the ship. The left picture is the old one, the right picture is the new one. 3 representatives of Exodus immigrants from Israel attended this ceremony. A meeting of President of State of Israel, Mr. Reuven Rivlin, with the Exodus immigrants was held on July 23rd, where the president was awarded with the Voyage Exodus diary of my father, David Chatkevich. I have at home this diary, which is written day by day in Hebrew, and I made from it a book, and I granted it to President Rivlin. Another thing that we are doing is an Exodus Heritage Conference, which is a story from Casablanca to Hamburg. It's a story of a group of immigrants from North Africa on the Exodus, and the first one was held on September 23rd, 2021 at the Palmach Museum in Tel Aviv. Since then, about 15 conferences took place all over the country. A plaque for the 3 people who were killed during the battle on the Exodus. Bill Bernstein, the first officer of the Exodus, was an American Jewish volunteer. Mordechai Bumstein and the young boy Hirsch Yakubovich were put it on Haifa Cemetery and unveiled it on November 27, 2020. Now, during the 2 years, the first one was 2017 and the other one 2022, we issued 2 medals to mark the 70th and the 75th anniversary of the voyage of an Exodus. The left one, the 70th medal, was drawn by Exodus immigrants. The 75th anniversary was drawn by a graphic designer. We did 2 commemoration ceremonies of the Exodus immigrants were held at the 70th and the 75th of the Exodus voyage. The first one was in the auditorium of Haifa in September 2017, and the other one was in Kibbutz Gan Shmuel Hall on July 14th, 2022. Last year, we did and unveiled the Exodus Memorial Plaque at the beach of Haifa, and this was held on July 17th, 2022, just putting attention that the night between the 17th and the 18th, 1947, was the exact night that the battle was on the ship. Here I would like to show you 3 commemoration panels that were unveiled in Germany. The first one in Emden, the site of the Emden detention camp, was done in 2016, and the other 2 are in 2019, one in the middle of St. Walden, Wilhelmshaven, in the village, and the other one in the Admiral Zimmermann camp in St. Walden, at the exact site of this St. Walden detention camp. The last slide that I would like to show you, we did an Exodus Storyteller Conference, and it was held on last October 22 at the Clandestine and Navy Museum in Haifa. In this event, 5 of Exodus immigrants told their story. Thank you again very much for listening and giving me the chance and the pleasure to tell you this story.
Well, everybody, thank you very much, everybody. So far, this has been such a jam-packed program. I don't know whether we have much time for questions, and you have loads of questions to be asked. I would ask everyone to just stay with us a little bit longer than the usual 60 minutes, because we have a very special way to end this program, and I don't want any of you to miss that. So first, I'm only going to spend the minimal time on coming events. Next week is Symphony of Courage, about Portugal again, but Afghani musicians who were allowed to come to Portugal so that they could make music again after the Taliban takeover and the denial of the right to make music. One of February's programs is very exciting. It's about the great French mime, Marcel Marceau, whose father was a butcher who was executed, or that is, he was killed in Auschwitz. He was deported. Marceau joined the French resistance and used his artistry to keep Jewish children quiet as he accompanied them on a perilous trek to freedom. And finally, jumping to March 5th, I'll be back with my own multimedia program called To Life, a magical, modern Hasidic tale of the Holocaust, in which I tell a life-affirming and poignant story of a hero of the Holocaust who's little known, Shmuel Ziegelbaum, who actually brought the first news of the Holocaust to the West. And I use music and pictures to tell stories that miraculously come together and interweave my discovery of Ziegelbaum's lost artifacts with an elegy to the lost world of the Jewish shtetl. Also, I want everyone to know that there are still season tickets available so that you don't miss anything. Take a look at the February 5th Marceau program, and you can select the season ticket option. Okay, now let's see if I've got to find some questions, and then we're going to have a special way to end. Let's see. Gosh, there are so many. Let's see. One question is whether is about a ship. Sorry, I'm looking. Why did they make an exception and put the people from the Exodus refugees sent them back to Germany rather than turning them on Cyprus as they usually did?
I can answer that. The British, they felt, the British then was led by Clement Attlee, the Prime Minister, and the Foreign Minister was Anoran Bevin, who happened to be also an anti-Semite. But he felt that the Jews have to be given a lesson. So instead of putting them in Cyprus, which is near Palestine, we're going to take these people all the way back from where they originated. And that is going to be a lesson, stop this illegal immigration movement. And it backfired. So they decided, well, they boarded the ship in France, we're going to take them back to France. When they arrived in France and the people refused to get off, the British waited a week or 2 weeks and said, in that case, we'll take them back from how they got to France, from the DP camps in Germany. We're going to take them all around the Bay of Biscay, the British Channel, all the way back to Germany. We'll teach them a lesson that illegal immigration doesn't work. Well, it backfired. That policy backfired because the whole world was watching. Especially there's a lady called Ruth Gruber. She was a famous journalist, and she was also a good photographer. And she followed the drama of the boat, which stretched for months. And she produced an album, a very beautiful album, which you can still get via Amazon or in the library. Showed the pictures of the people on these boats, on the Exodus and the British boats.
Thank you, Mordecai. Ruth Gruber's role was very important. I'm glad you mentioned her. I don't know if anyone knows the answer to this question. Do you know the story of a ship called the Eliyahu Golem, which was painted by Salvador Dali for the World Jewish Congress on the 20th anniversary of the creation of the State of Israel? Anybody know about that ship? No? Okay, there's something that we have to research. Let's see what else. Jews were sent also to Mauritius, is that correct? What was the life like for them, and did they get to Palestine?
They stayed in Mauritius until the end of the war. They were interned in a camp, well, that was like almost 5 years in Mauritius. You can't escape from Mauritius unless you can swim several thousand miles and avoid the sharks. And, you know, Mauritius is, I said before, off India. It's not really off India. It's like 1,000 miles off India. It's way in the Indian Ocean. Today it's a tourist spot. Okay, it's nice beaches. But it belonged to Britain. They had an air base. From that air base, British planes went to bomb Japanese positions. So the idea was, we're taking you to Mauritius, and you'll be stuck there for as long as we want.
Oh my. And now, no doubt, people go there on vacations.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find another question. I'm scrolling through the chats, folks. My gosh. There are so many questions, I really don't know which one to choose. Someone is saying there were at least 10 ships from Aliyah Bet. Is that correct? And I'm wondering, was the Jewish Brigade involved in helping people get onto these ships?
There were more than 10. There were 100 ships.
100?
Throughout the 14-year period, there were 100 ships. The Jewish Brigade was involved. They helped to transport these people to the points of embarkation. The Jewish Brigade was in Italy and Belgium and other places. And since they had British uniforms, they were part of the British Army, so they could facilitate the transport of the people to reach those ports of embarkation, all of them who were either in Italy, southern Italy, or southern France, some of them in Greece. So they were involved.
Wow. Several people are asking why, it seems like a question that many of us may know, but why did the British side with the Arabs rather than the Jews in Palestine? That will be a hard question to say in one sentence.
That's that very simple answer. Oil. The Arabs had oil, and the British didn't have one drop of oil. And Britain was broke. After World War II, Britain won the war, but was broke. And what saved Britain and the rest of Europe was the Marshall Plan, okay? So they needed, and the British had an interest in still controlling the Middle East. The British were in Egypt, they were in Iraq, they were in Syria, they were in Jordan, and they wanted to maintain their foothold in the Middle East, okay? And the oil, the Arab oil, which they needed. Without oil, the British economy would have collapsed, okay? So, but in 1947, the British realized they couldn't hold on to the vast empire, and they gave up on India. And once they decided to give up on India, in 1947, they decided also to give up on Palestine.
That tells us a lot. I think I'm going to be able to pose one other question that has been asked several times, which is who helped to purchase and finance the ships? And also, how were the American volunteers recruited, or how did they come together for this enterprise?
Okay, the financing came from the Jewish Agency in Palestine. The Jewish Agency is an arm of the World Zionist Organization. The World Zionist Organization was firmly established in the United States. So, in fact, before World War II, the Zionist Organization operated out of England, Chaim Weizmann. But after World War II, it was New York and Washington and so forth. So the monies came from the Zionist Organization, who collected money from the Jewish public in the United States, turned it over to the Jewish Agency, and the Jewish Agency then financed this whole operation.
Well, that answers a lot. And about how American Jews were recruited, or how did the different soldiers come together who wound up helping with this whole Aliyah bet?
Well, the Zionist Organization then undertook a detective work to find out who were the Jewish veterans of World War II who had some knowledge about navigating boats in the US Navy. And then they asked him, well, would you like to help your brethren to get to Palestine? You're not going to get any honorarium, but we'll cover all of your travel costs. You know how to get a boat sailing on the sea. You have some experience. The same thing happened, incidentally, later on when Israel became a state, and Israel didn't have an air force yet. And the Zionist Organization, then they used American Jewish pilots who piloted American planes in World War II to help create the Israeli Air Force, the first planes of the Israel. In fact, they flew planes from an airfield in Czechoslovakia, which the Czechs sold in return for cash, and they flew the first planes into Israel. And in fact, some of the American pilots were the first who bombed positions of the Egyptian army when they invaded Israel.
Thank you. If people will wait, we're going to ask one or two more questions, and then we've got our special way to finish up. So don't go away. I want to ask Uri, how did they manage to sustain 4,500 people with food, sanitation, the effects of seasickness? It seems to me an impossible task on the Exodus. Uri, do you have the answer to that?
Well, first of all, they construct the upper deck of the Exodus bunks in stages. You know, like some of the passengers said that it reminds them Auschwitz. And that's how they can fit so many people inside. And they have enough food and water for the for all the people inside the boat.
And let's have a question from Michael. Michael, you went through so much, and Gertruda went through so much, and then wound up staying with you in Palestine, rather than going back to her home as a Catholic. So I'm wondering, what was the ceremony like when your nanny was named the 7th righteous among the nations. Do you remember that ceremony and how it affected her? Michael?
Yeah, I remember this was in 1962. She was invited to Jerusalem, to Yad Vashem, to plant a tree and announced as one of the righteous of the nation. Today there are more than 22,000 trees around Yad Vashem, and I make it a point every time, and I am 3 times a year in Israel. I go to Yad Vashem and I visit her tree, and with me she's still alive, and that's it basically in a nutshell.
Okay, I think we're going over, so I'm going to move this over to Mordecai. Do you want to make any kind of final statement about this whole complicated and fascinating story?
Okay, just 1 minute. First of all, for anyone here, can you all see me? Am I visible?
You're
Yeah.
visible.
Okay. If you go to Yad Vashem and in the reception center, you pass the reception center and you start visiting the Garden of the Righteous, one of the first trees you'll see is the tree of Gertruda Babelinska, which I planted, so people can see that at the start of their visit to Yad Vashem. Now, so don't forget about that. It's an olive tree. Now, get back to the story. My conclusion is as following. Altogether, some 70,000 Jews sailed to Palestine on more than 100 ships, trying to dodge and evade the blockade of the Palestinian shores by the British Navy. Over half of the boats were stopped by the British, and most of the captured immigrants were either allowed to stay in the country, but their names were deducted from that particular year's quota number, or they were sent to internment camps in Cyprus, Mauritius, both islands then under British control. Over 1,600 people did not make it, but either drowned at sea or died from other tragedies while en route. Now, Aliyah Bet proved a powerful Zionist tool in which the Exodus played an important role, more than any other boat. As the famous journalist and photographer Ruth Gruber, who followed the Exodus on its voyage, entitled her book on the Exodus, in her words, the subtitle of the book is "The Ship That Launched a Nation." It was meant to arouse world public opinion and force the British government to allow free Jewish immigration to Palestine. The Aliyah Bet operation contributed to the British decision to accept the UN resolution of November 29, 1947, and evacuate Palestine in May 1948. A final point is that the example of the passengers on the Aliyah Bet, who were determined to reach Palestine on rickety boats, and the possibility of internment by the British during the post-war period. Their determination added to the determination of the newborn state of Israel to face the Arab military challenge, first by the militant Palestinians, followed with the invasion of 5 Arab countries, and lead Israel to victory during the War of Independence. I just want to remind all the listeners, when we hear about what they call the tragedy of the creation of the State of Israel in 1948, Israel accepted the UN resolution in a country, the borders then were much smaller than the borders of Israel today. On the day Israel that was created, 5 Arab nations invaded Israel militarily. So let's not forget that, who started the war. Let us hope that we will have peace between Israel and all the Arab countries. And again, we all salute all the people on the boats during the Aliyah Bet, and especially all the 4,500 people who had the courage to board the Exodus boat. Okay, thank you very much, all of you.
Those beautiful thoughts, Mordecai, and very important. So I'm glad you shared that with us. And now we have a special way to end the program. Zvi, I believe you have something that you would like to do. Is that correct? You can
Yes,
tell
of course. I would like, together with you, to surprise Michael STOLOWITZKY, and grant you, Michael, the medal that we did this year. This medal is going to be with you when you'll arrive to Israel next month. So let's assume that I'm giving it to you now. Take it.
Now I understand why you said I'll see you in Israel. Oh my God. So
That's
you
right.
know where I'm staying.
Yes, now I know, but we have to make a connection between us. And at the same time, I'll give you also the Ma'apil badge.
Yes, thank you.
And
Thank you
another
very,
badge,
very much.
which is as an Exodus immigrant. So
The last time I saw you, and I want everybody to hear it, is when you were in the Exodus with me. The only thing, you were in the womb of your mother, and I saw you there. Thank you very, very much, and I'll see you in Israel in 2 weeks.
I'm sure that you have an X-ray eyes.
Well, everybody, all of our guests, I want to thank you most heartily for this fascinating and really important program, which certainly gives us a lot of insight that we never had before. And I hope everyone who's listening will look at the website for the description of the next upcoming programs and join us again. And so I'm going to say to everyone, bye-bye till next time.